No, that's all wrong. Get your stance right.
Sir, adjusting now.
Align the sight. Squeeze. Don't pull the trigger.
Understood, sir.
Do it again. Go.
The first thing that breaks the morning is not the shot. It's the smile. Chief Grant Halvorsen stands behind the firing line with his hands laced behind his back, sea wind worrying the edges of his camouflage blouse, and he watches the new shooter settle behind his rifle like she's stepping into a confession booth. Someone murmurs a time check. Someone else clicks a timer to life. And Halvorsen, 10 straight years the range king, the unit's clean legend, the man whose name has been etched into the long-range board so often the paint around it has faded, leans down just enough for her to hear him over the goals. That gun's too heavy for you. The rifle in front of her is an M82A1, matte black, thick as a fence post, its barrel long enough to cast a shadow that reaches the sandbags. The kind of weapon that feels less like a tool and more like an argument. A .50 BMG doesn't ask questions. It makes statements. The new shooter doesn't answer. She only slides her cheek onto the stock, gentle and exact, like she's placing a coin on a table. Her gloved fingers find the pistol grip. Her other hand rides the rear back. She draws one breath that smells of salt and gun oil and distant kelp. Through the scope, the far berm is a shimmer of mirage and heat. Steel plates hang out there like little dull moons, circular, rectangular, a thin silhouette cut to the shape of a human torso. They are so far away the untrained I would swear they aren't real, just tricks of the light. A range flag snaps left, then hesitates, then flicks right. Wind. Variable. Coastal and dishonest. The spotter beside her, a young sailor with a baby face and eyes too wide for the world he's in, leans in behind his own glass. His name tape reads Park, and his hands tremble as he steadies the spotting scope. Halvorsen's record sits at the top of the scoreboard in big block letters, 98.7. 10 years, untouched. 10 years of men trying and failing and joking about it like it's impossible by design. Someone calls, shooter ready. The new shooter lifts 2 fingers, not looking up. And right then, right as the timer begins counting down, every man on the line feels the same thought, sharp as a pin. Who is she to think she can take that number? No one knows her story yet. No one knows the price of her silence. They only know the gun is big, the air is moving, the steel is far, and Halvorsen is smiling like he's already won. The new shooter exhales halfway, holds the rest, and lets the reticle settle. The world narrows to a crosshair, and then the first shot tears the morning open. A concussion rolls down the range, slapping chests and rattling teeth. The muzzle brake spits a sideways blast that kicks dust into a low cloud. Park flinches hard, then forces his eye back to the glass. Far out, a steel plate answers with a clean, bright ring. Dead center. Halvorsen's smile falters, just for a fraction, like a crack racing through ice. The shooter doesn't look at him. She cycles the action with calm economy. No wasted motion. No show. She is already solving the next problem. Because the wind has shifted again. And the timer doesn't care who you are. It only cares what you can do in the seconds you have left. Our CTA 1, 500 words. Before we see how this unfolds, pause for just a second. Have you ever been underestimated so casually it almost felt personal? If you're hooked right now, if you need to know what she does next under that kind of pressure, subscribe. We live for stories where quiet skill changes everything. Now, watch this. The second shot lands a hair left of center, still inside the inner ring. The third shot lands closer. Not random. Not luck. A deliberate walk inward, like she's tightening a knot. Park swallows, throat bubbling. His job is to call impacts, to read the mirage, to help her adjust. But there's a problem. She's already adjusting before he speaks, as if the wind is whispering directly into her ear. He glances sideways at her face. It's hard to see under the brim of her cover and the shadow of the rifle, but what he can see unsettles him. She looks composed. Not the brittle calm of someone pretending. The real kind. The kind that comes from having been in worse places than a range. Name. Park whispers, because he's not supposed to talk. But he can't help it. She blinks once. Slow. Serrano. That's all. Serrano. No rank said aloud, because everyone here already knows it from her file. Petty Officer First Class. New to the platoon. A transfer wrapped in layers of paperwork. A quiet arrival. No dramatic introduction. No chest-thumping stories traded over bad coffee. A ghost walking into a room full of men who live on reputation. Down the line, other shooters wait their turn. Checking dope cards, tapping kestrels, tugging ear pro into place. Most of them pretend not to stay. They stay anyway, because Serrano is small compared to the rifle, and because Halvorsen made sure everyone heard him, and because the M82 is not forgiving. It demands muscle, but it punishes tension. It punishes ego too. Halvorsen steps back, arms crossing now, posture still casual, still that easy confidence, but his eyes have sharpened. The smile he wears is thinner, controlled. He tells himself this is one string of fire. One clean run can happen by chance. The real test is always the next stage. The qualification is not one event. It's a gauntlet. They call it the long-range qualification, but it's really a long day of humiliation if you come unprepared. Cold bore shots at unknown distance. Timed engagements. Alternate positions. Stress shoots with sprints between firing points. Wind holds that change mid-breath. A moving target stage that punishes anyone who tries to feel it out. A decade ago, Halvorsen rewrote the record by treating the whole day like math and prayer. Since then, nobody has touched it. Until this moment, this first string, where Serrano is not just hitting. She's grouping. Park's voice finally finds its function. Impact center, slight high. Winds picking up right to left, maybe, 3. Serrano's finger lifts, adjusts the turret one measured click, then another. She doesn't nod, doesn't thank him. Not rude, just focused like the world has narrowed to two things, solution and execution. The fourth shot hits with a ring that sounds almost identical to the first, and that sameness is what scares Park. Consistency is the rarest violence. The range officer, Lieutenant Commander Rourke, stands behind the scoring table in Mirrored Eye Pro. He watches with the bored patience of someone who has seen every kind of swagger dissolve under recall. He calls, time. Serrano stops immediately. Fingers off trigger. Safety on. She eases back as if the rifle might bruise if she moves too fast. The line is quiet for a beat. Then the murmurs begin. Who the hell is she? Did you see that third shot? That's not a lucky string. Halvorsen doesn't speak. He walks toward the scorer's board and watches the numbers go up for Serrano's first stage. It's a strong score. Not record-breaking by itself, but strong enough to tilt the day. Strong enough that the air tastes different. Rourke looks at Halvorsen as if to say, interesting. Halvorsen gives a small, controlled shrug that pretends this doesn't matter. But his jaw flexes once. And Serrano just rechecks her gear, wipes a thin line of salt off her scope cap, and says nothing at all. Park takes a breath, as if he's been underwater. You've shot the M82 before, he says, not a question. Serrano pauses, then slides a single round between her fingers, feeling its weight. I've shot a lot of things. That answer should be enough. But it isn't, because Park is 19, and he wants stories. He wants heroes. He wants to know how someone like her appears out of nowhere and shoots like that with the unit's heaviest rifle as if it's an extension of her spine. He tries again. Where'd you learn? Serrano looks at him then. Just a glance. Her eyes are not cold. They are careful. Somewhere windy, she says. And then Rourke calls for the next stage. Unknown distance. Cold bore. One shot. You don't get to walk it in. You either know yourself, or you don't. They move to the next firing point along a sandy cut in the dunes where the wind comes harder off the water. The steel is changed out. Smaller plates now, farther out. The range crew moves like ants, efficient and silent. The scoreboard sits under a canopy, and the record number, 98.7, stays like a day. Halvorsen steps up first, because that's how it's been for 10 years. He likes to set the tone, likes everyone to watch him do what they can't. He settles in, takes his cold bore shot, and the plate rings. Clean. Of course. A few men exhale like they've been holding breath without realizing it. There, the world is back in order. Halvorsen rises, dusts his hands, and glances at Serrano as if to say, "Your turn, quiet girl." Serrano steps forward, and that's when Park notices something that makes his stomach tighten. The rear bag she uses, her bag, has been moved. Not far, a foot maybe, but enough that if she drops behind the rifle the way she did before, her natural point of aim will be off by just enough to make the cold bore shot miss. Park looks around, heart tapping fast. Everyone is close. Everyone is watching. Nobody is supposed to touch anyone else's equipment. But somebody did. He leans toward her and whispers, "Your bag." Serrano glances down, sees it instantly, doesn't react outwardly, doesn't accuse. She just slides it back into place with the toe of her boot. So small a movement it looks accidental. Park's pulse doesn't slow, because that means something worse. It means she's being tested in a way that has nothing to do with steel plates. Halvorsen watches from behind, face blank now. The coastal wind pushes hair out from under Serrano's cover. She tucks it without thinking. Her fingers check the bolt, check the chamber, check the turret. Rourke calls, "Shooter ready." Serrano raises 2 fingers again. Park's mouth is dry. He reads the mirage through his glass, sees it running fast like water over hot asphalt. He wants to help, but he knows, on cold bore, too much talking can poison the shot. You flood the mind. You make a shooter chase. Serrano doesn't chase. She waits for the smallest lull, the half-second where the flag hesitates. Then she breaks the shot. The rifle bucks. The blast hits Park's chest like a shove. Far out, the plate rings. Not just a hit. A center punch. A sound so clean it feels like the range itself approves. The murmurs come faster now, no longer casual. That's cold bore. Unknown distance. Who is she? Halvorsen's eyes narrow. He looks past Serrano, past Park, toward the line of dunes that hides the base from the outside world, as if he's suddenly seeing something else. As if some part of him is doing the same math Serrano is doing, and coming up with an answer he doesn't like. Stage after stage, Serrano keeps doing it. Not perfect. Nobody is perfect in wind like this, but close enough that every time the scoreboard updates, the gap between her and Halvorsen shrinks like a tide going out. The day becomes a living thing. It presses in on everyone. It makes jokes die in throats. It turns small mistakes into catastrophes. On the stress stage, shooters sprint 50 yards through soft sand, lungs burning, then drop behind rifles with hearts hammering. A man can be a genius with a rifle and still miss if his pulse is bouncing the reticle off target like a metronome. Halvorsen nails his string, because he always does. Then Serrano steps up, sprints with the same economical stride she does everything with, drops to prone with a controlled collapse, and fires. Ring, ring, ring. Her breathing is loud enough that Park can hear it through his ear pro. In for 4. Hold for 2. Press. When she finishes, she doesn't celebrate. She doesn't even look at the score. She just rolls her shoulders once, like easing a pack strap, and checks on Park. Not his performance. His condition. "You good?" she asks quietly. Park blinks, startled. "Yes, petty officer." Her eyes rest on his hands, still trembling. "Eat something." He nods too fast. "Yes, petty officer." And she looks away, already back inside the problem of the day. That small moment, her noticing him, lands harder than any shot. Because Park realizes something. Serrano isn't trying to beat Halvorsen to prove a point. She's trying to survive something invisible. The afternoon heat climbs. The wind shifts again, now quartering off the sea. The smell of sunscreen mixes with gunpowder. Sweat runs under plates and belts. Rourke announces the final stage before the shoot-off, the legend string. It's the stage Halvorsen built his record on, a sequence of 5 targets at extreme distance, each smaller than the last, with a mandatory hold change between shots. You don't just shoot. You demonstrate mastery. You show you can think under recoil. Halvorsen steps up, because of course he does. Before he drops behind the rifle, he turns slightly toward the line and says, "Just loud enough, wind's free today. Don't blame it." A couple of men chuckle, grateful for something familiar. Serrano doesn't laugh. Park watches her face, and he sees it, just for a second, something like memory. Not nostalgia. A scar. Halvorsen fires his legend string with crisp rhythm. Ring, ring, ring. A slight pause as he reads the mirage again. Ring, ring. 5 for 5. The line exhales. There he is, the king. Halvorsen rises and finally allows himself a small grin, looking at Serrano as if to say, "That's what you up against." Then Serrano steps forward for her legend string. She kneels by the rifle and opens a small notebook, weathered, edges curled from moisture. Park glimpses numbers, tiny handwriting, a grid of corrections and wind calls. Not standard issue. Personal. She closes it, slides it back into her pocket, and settles behind the M82. Halvorsen's earlier comment, "Too heavy for you," hangs in the air again, but now it feels less like a joke and more like a prayer he once answered. Rourke calls, "Shooter ready." 2 fingers. The first shot rings. The second shot rings. The third shot rings. Park's breath catches because the third target is the smallest plate, barely visible even through glass. Yet Serrano's hit is clean. Then the wind changes. Not subtly, not politely. A hard gust that whips the range flag almost horizontal. Sand skitters across the firing point. Someone sways softly under their breath. This is where shooters miss. This is where records die. Park feels panic rise. He wants to call the wind, to warn her, to do something. Serrano doesn't lift her head. She waits, waits, waits. The gust fades, replaced by a jittery, uncertain flow. She fires the 4th shot. The plate rings, but it's not center. It's an edge hit. Still a hit, but barely. A murmur runs down the line. Halvorsen's mouth twitches, relief trying to become a smile. Serrano cycles the action. The last target is the smallest and farthest, the one that makes grown men curse into their cheek weld. She holds her breath halfway. Park watches her trigger finger. How still it is, how patient. Then the wind hits again. A sudden sideways shove. Serrano fires anyway. The shot cracks, echoing off the dunes. Far out, there's silence. No ring. A miss. It doesn't sound like failure, because a miss makes no sound at all. But the absence of sound is a kind of roar. Serrano's face doesn't change. But Park sees her throat tighten once, as if she swallowed something sharp. Rourke marks the score. The board updates. Halvorsen is still ahead. Not by much, but enough. Enough that the line settles back into its old story. The king is the king. Halvorsen breathes out slowly, as if he'd been holding tension in his ribs for an hour. He walks past Serrano and says, "Low, almost kind, good run." It should sound generous. It sounds like ownership. Serrano stands, slings her gear, and walks toward the shade without a word. Park follows because he doesn't know what else to do. In the cooler shadow under a camo net, Park finds the courage to speak. "You are doing perfect," he says, voice too eager, too wounded on her behalf. Serrano unscrews her canteen and drinks. Her hands are steady again. Perfect isn't the job. What is the job? Park asks, before he can stop himself. Serrano looks out toward the dunes where the ocean flashes like broken glass. To make the shot when it matters. Park doesn't understand, not fully, not yet, because he still thinks today is about pride. About a scoreboard. About Halvorsen and his decade-old number. He doesn't know what Rourke knows, because Rourke's phone has been vibrating all day in his pocket, each buzz a reminder that the world outside the range doesn't pause for training. And he doesn't know what Serrano knows, because Serrano has been counting something more urgent than points. Time. Rourke calls the shooters in. The sun is lowering now, throwing long shadows across the sand. The air cools slightly, enough that sweat becomes cold on skin. Rourke's voice is calm, but it carries an edge that makes men straighten. "We're doing a shoot-off," he says. That isn't unusual when scores are close. But then he adds, "Not for bragging rights." The line stills. Halvorsen's head lifts. Rourke continues, 2 shooters. 1 slot. A deployment slot. Not just a patch on a board. A place on a team that will leave this base and go somewhere unnamed. somewhere that will never appear in a story told at a bar. Park's stomach drops. His hands go cold. Halvorsen's eyes sharpen like a blade being honed. Rourke looks at Serrano. You want it? Serrano doesn't answer immediately. In that pause, the first real hesitation Park has seen in her all day, changes the temperature of the moment. Halvorsen smirks again, small and tight, as if he senses weakness, as if he thinks, there it is. The weight finally lands. Rourke repeats, Petty Officer Serrano, you want the slot. Serrano's gaze flickers to Park, just once. Then back to Rourke. Yes, she says. One syllable, but it sounds like something locked. Halvorsen's voice cuts in. What's the scenario? Rourke's jaw works. Classified. You'll get the brief if you earn it. Halvorsen scoffs softly. So you're picking based on points. Rourke's stare is flat. I'm picking based on proof. He gestures toward the firing line. One more stage. Custom. The range crew starts moving targets again, but not the normal ones. They bring out a steel silhouette with a smaller plate welded into the chest. A hostage-taker target. The kind where you don't get to be mostly right. Park's mouth goes dry. Rourke speaks like a man reciting a weather report. Distance, 1,760 yards. A mile. The line reacts despite itself. A low ripple of disbelief. Halvorsen's eyebrows lift. With the M82. Rourke nods. Cold ball. One round. Wins yours to read. You miss, you don't get a second. You hit outside the inner plate. You don't get a second. Halvorsen's grin returns, realer now. This is his world. Big gun. Long distance. Ego and physics and a clean trigger press. He glances at Serrano. Still want it? Serrano says nothing. Park leans toward her, whispering, a mile is. I know, she says. But her voice is not irritated. It's tired. Rourke calls, Halvorsen, you up first. Halvorsen steps forward, rolling his shoulders like a boxer. He drops behind the rifle, checks the bubble level, runs his thumb over his turret. Park sees him mouth numbers, come-ups, wind holds, the same ritual he's done for 10 years. Halvorsen's spotter, an older operator with a scar that splits his eyebrow, calls the wind. Halvorsen adjusts. Then he fires. The shot booms across the range. Seconds pass, long enough that the whole line feels suspended. Then fire out, a faint ring. A hit. But Park's heart sinks because through the spotting scope he sees where it lands. Outside the inner plate. A torso hit. Not a precision hit. Rourke raises a hand. Impact confirmed. Outer. Halvorsen lifts his head, eyes flashing. It's a hit. Rourke's voice is calm. It's not the hit. Halvorsen's face hardens. He stands, dust on his elbows, pride in his posture like armor. He looks at Serrano as if to say, good luck. Rourke gestures. Serrano. The range goes silent in a way that feels unnatural. Even the goals seem to drift farther off, as if they've learned to avoid the noise. Serrano steps forward. She kneels by the rifle and, for the first time all day, she closes her eyes. Just for a second, Park watches her throat move. When she opens them, they look older. She lies down behind the M82. Her cheek weld is perfect. Her breathing slows. Park leans in behind his glass, reading Mirage. Winds switching. Right to left. Then it's... Serrano lifts one finger without looking at him. Not a shush. A signal. Wait. Park clamps his mouth shut, heart pounding. His job is to help her. But she is telling him, gently, that the best help is silence right now. Rourke calls, shooter ready. 2 fingers. The wind gusts hard. Sand skitters. The flag snaps. Halvorsen's smile creeps back. She's going to miss. He can feel it. He wants it. Then Serrano does something that makes Park's eyes widen. She doesn't fight the wind. She times it. She waits until the gust steadies into a consistent push, not chaos. And then, only then, she presses the trigger like she's turning off a light. The rifle detonates. The recoil shoves her shoulder, but she rides it like a wave. Fire out. The silence stretches. 1 second. 2. 3. Then, clear as a bell even at a mile. Ring. Not just a ring. A higher pitch. The inner plate. Dead. Center. For a moment, nobody moves. Halvorsen's face goes still, as if someone just erased the expression from it. Rourke nods once. Sharp. Impact confirmed. Inner. Park realizes he's been holding his breath so long it hurts. He exhales in a rush that feels like laughter but isn't. Serrano rises, steps back from the rifle, and doesn't look at the target. She looks at Halvorsen, not with triumph, with something else. A quiet, steady message. I wasn't here for your permission. Halvorsen's mouth opens, then closes. His eyes flick to the scoreboard as if it can save him. Rourke turns toward the scoring table. Update the board. The range crew moves fast, calculating totals, stage points, penalties, inner plate bonus. Park stands on tiptoe to see. Halvorsen's decade record is still at the top. But now there's a second number. Serrano's. And it's close enough that the air feels thin. Halvorsen's voice is low, edged. This is a circus. Rourke's gaze doesn't flinch. No, this is selection. Serrano shoulders her pack. Park hurries after her, because if she walks away now, he thinks he might lose the only real thing he's witnessed all day. Under the shade net again, Park blurts, that inner plate at a mile. How did you? Serrano's eyes flick to him. You want a real answer? Yes, Park says, too fast. She takes a slow breath. I've missed a shot that mattered. Park's chest tightens. In combat. Serrano's jaw tightens, just a fraction. In life. Park doesn't know what to do with that. He wants details. He wants a story with clean edges. But Serrano is not offering a story. She's offering a warning. Rourke approaches them, posture controlled. He glances at Park, then back to Serrano. Briefing in 30, he says. Serrano nods once. Rourke hesitates, then adds quietly, you're doing fine. Fine. Not great. Not incredible. Fine. Like a man speaking to someone balancing on a ledge. Serrano's mouth twitches, not quite a smile. Yes, sir. Rourke walks away. Park whispers, they're sending you somewhere. Serrano doesn't deny it. Park's voice drops. Is it why you transferred? Serrano finally looks out toward the ocean again, where the light is turning amber and the wind smells like rain. What they didn't tell you about this job, she says softly, is that it doesn't just ask you to be accurate. Park waits, afraid to interrupt. It asks you to be certain, Serrano finishes. A chill runs up Park's arms despite the heat. Because certainty is not a skill you can train with steel plates. Certainty is a thing you bleed for. They move into a small briefing room built into a duneside structure that looks like a maintenance shack from the outside. Inside, it's air-conditioned cold, the kind of cold that makes sweat turn clammy. A screen glows at the front. Rourke stands with two other officers Park doesn't recognize, men in plain uniforms with eyes that don't linger on names tapes. Halvorsen is there too, arms crossed, face set like stone. He hasn't been dismissed. He hasn't been told he lost. Not yet. Rourke taps the screen. A satellite image appears. A sliver of coastline, a cluster of buildings, a road cutting inland. Rourke speaks carefully. 2 nights ago, a partner asset went dark. Halvorsen's eyes narrow. Rourke continues. Yesterday, we picked up a transmission. A hostage video. 1 American contractor. 1 local interpreter. They are alive. For now. Park's stomach knots. Rourke clicks again. A still frame from the video. 2 figures kneeling, hands bound. The camera angle is low and shaky. Rourke's voice is flat, but the room feels like it's vibrating. The target is a militia commander who doesn't negotiate. He makes examples. Halvorsen leans forward slightly. Why snipers? Rourke looks at Serrano. Because the window will be small. Because the terrain is open. Because the shot will be long. Park's eyes dart to Serrano, and he sees her face change. Not much, but enough. The careful calm becomes something like readiness. Halvorsen speaks again, voice hard. And you're using today's scores to pick who takes the shot. Rourke's stare is direct. I'm using today to verify who can stay disciplined when ego is loud and the wind is wise. Halvorsen's jaw tightens. Rourke clicks the screen again. A diagram appears. Building layout, likely positions, estimated distance. Park's breath catches when he sees the number. 1,930 yards. Longer than the mile shot. Long enough that the Earth's rotation isn't just a trivia fact. It's a variable. Rourke says, "We're not asking you to be heroes. We're asking you to be correct." Silence. Then Halvorson's voice, "Quieter now. You already know who you want." Rourke doesn't answer. He doesn't need to. The room feels it. Serrano's inner plate hit at a mile wasn't just a stage. It was a demonstration. A preview. Halvorson turns his gaze on Serrano, and for the first time all day the arrogance in his face is diluted by something else. Fear. Not of her hurting him, of her replacing him, of the story changing. Serrano meets his stare without blinking. Then she looks away first, not because she loses, but because she refuses to feed his need for a duel. Rourke says, "We're running one more verification shoot at dawn. Same rifle, same ammo lot, same constraints. If you can't replicate under fatigue, you don't go." Understood. Halvorson nods sharply. Serrano nods once. Park realizes suddenly he's not supposed to be here for this part. He's too junior, too soft, too human. But Serrano's earlier question echoes, "You good?" And he understands. She sees him not as a kid, but as a person who might crack under pressure. Rourke dismisses them. Outside, the sky is bruised purple. The wind has cooled. The ocean is louder now, as if it's closer. Halvorson walks past Serrano and stops. He doesn't look at Park. He looks at Serrano. "That inner plate," he says, voice low. "Nice shot." Serrano doesn't respond. Halvorson's nostrils flare. "You always this quiet." Serrano's eyes lift to him. "You always this loud." Park's heart stutters. Halvorson's expression shifts. Anger, surprise, then something like grudging amusement. "You think you're better." Serrano's voice is even. "I think you're distracted." Halvorson steps closer, just enough that Park's body tenses. "By what?" Serrano holds his gaze. "By being seen." Halvorson's face flushes, and for a second his composure slips. He wants to say something sharp, something that puts her back in the box he made for her this morning. But he doesn't, because he can't find the angle. Serrano moves to leave. Halvorson's voice follows her, quieter now, edged with something that almost sounds like desperation. "If you go out there and you miss, they'll bury it, but you'll still live with it." Serrano stops. Park watches her shoulders lift and fall with a slow breath. Then she says, so softly Park almost misses it, "I know." And she keeps walking. That night, Park can't sleep. He lies in his rack hearing the ocean through the walls, hearing distant doors closing, hearing boots on concrete, hearing his own heartbeat like a metronome counting down to something. He thinks about Serrano's words, "I've missed a shot that mattered." He thinks about Halvorson's warning, "You'll still live with it." He thinks about the hostages kneeling in the still frame on the screen. And he realizes the scoreboard is the least important thing in the story now. Before dawn, the base is a dim machine. Red lights in hallways. Coffee that tastes burned. Quiet voices. The kind of quiet that isn't peaceful, just controlled. At the range, the air is colder, damp enough that rifles bead with moisture. Serrano wipes her optic lens with a cloth. Careful. Park stands beside her, spotting scope set. Hands less shaky than yesterday, but still not steady. Halvorson arrives with his own spotter, posture rigid. He looks like he hasn't slept, but is wearing his confidence like a pressed uniform. Rourke stands between them like a referee who hates the sport. "One round," he says. "Same distance. Inner plate required. Wind is what it is." The target is out there again, 1,760 yards. The inner plate a dark speck inside a larger silhouette. The range flag snaps, then droops, then snaps again. Rourke nods at Halvorson. "You first." Halvorson drops behind the rifle with practiced aggression, as if attacking the ground. He breathes fast, then forces it slower. His spotter murmurs wind calls. Halvorson adjusts. He fires. The shot booms. They wait. The steel rings. A hit. But Park sees it immediately through his glass. Outer plate. Again, Halvorson sits up like he's been slapped. His eyes flash toward the flag. toward the mirage, toward anything that can be blamed without Dishina. Rourke's voice is flat. Outer. Halvorson's mouth works, but no words come out clean. He stands abruptly, stepping back. Serrano doesn't look at him. Rourke gestures. Serrano. Park's hands are cold on the spotting scope. Serrano lies down behind the rifle, and Park notices something that chills him more than the morning air. Her lips move, barely. Not prayer, not numbers. A name. He can't hear it, but he sees the shape of it. Serrano's eyes close for half a second, then open. Rourke asks, shooter ready. 2 fingers. The wind steadies into a consistent push, right to left, strong but predictable. Serrano fires. The rifle's blast punches the air. Seconds stretch. Then, ring. Inner plate. Clean. Rourke nods once. Confirmed. Halvorson's face goes pale, then red, then settles into a hard mask. He looks like a man being forced to watch his own replacement happen in real time. Rourke steps closer to Serrano. Pack your gear, he says quietly. You on the bird. Park's chest tightens. He can't help it. Petty officer. Serrano looks at him. You did good, she says. Park swallows. You too. Something flickers behind Serrano's eyes, almost warmth. Eat something, she repeats, like it's the only advice she trusts. Then she turns away, and Park realizes the advice is not about hunger. It's about staying human. Halvorson's voice cuts across the range. Sharp. This is a mistake. Everyone stills. Rourke turns slowly. Say it again, Chief. Halvorson steps forward, eyes locked on Serrano. You're sending someone untested. Park's mind rebels. Untested. She just. But Halvorson isn't talking about steel. He's talking about the kind of test that doesn't ring when you hit. Rourke's voice is quiet, dangerous. She's tested enough. Halvorson laughs once, humorless. You don't know her. Rourke's eyes flick to Serrano, then back. Neither do you. That's the point. Halvorson's gaze narrows. What's her real file say? The air tightens. Serrano stands still, her pack strap in her hand, like she's holding herself in place. Rourke's jaw flexes. You don't need her file. You need your discipline. Halvorson's face twists. My discipline built that record. Serrano speaks then, voice calm but cutting. Your record built your mouth. Halvorson's eyes widen, then harden into something ugly. You think this is about mouths? You think this is about being underestimated? Serrano's face doesn't change. No. Halvorson steps closer, voice low, venom quiet. Then what is it about? Serrano holds his gaze. It's about not missing when a life is on the other side of your mistake. Silence. Halvorson's mouth opens, then closes, because there's nothing to say to that without exposing yourself. Rourke breaks the moment. Serrano, move. Serrano shoulders her pack and starts walking toward the staging area where a vehicle waits. Park watches her go, throat tight, and realizes he wants to call out something. Good luck, be safe, come back. But none of those feel like enough. So he says the only true thing he can manage. Petty Officer Serrano. She turns. Park forces the words out. What was the name? Serrano's eyes hold his for a long beat. Then she answers, voice barely above the wind. Lena. Park's chest tightens like a fist closing. Serrano turns away again. And Park finally understands what Serrano meant yesterday. She isn't chasing perfection. She's chasing redemption. Because somewhere in her past, a shot went wrong, or a decision did, and it took someone named Lena out of the world. And now, on a different coastline, under a different sky, she has been given another chance to be certain. The vehicle door closes. The engine starts. Serrano disappears down the sandy road toward the flight line. Halvorson stands on the range, staring after her like the ocean just stole something from him. And Park, young, shaking, suddenly older, looks back at the empty firing point where the M82 still rests on its bipod. A heavy rifle. A heavier truth. Because if Serrano misses on the real mission, there will be no steel ring to tell the story. Only silence. And that silence will be final. A CTA2, tilde 3,000 words. That inner plate ring at a mile wasn't just skill. It was a promise under pressure. If you felt your chest tighten when she whispered Lena, you're not alone. Subscribe, and stay with us for the moments where courage isn't loud. It's disciplined. Because what Serrano faces next won't be a scoreboard. Let's continue. The flight line smells like jet fuel and wet concrete. The rotors of the waiting aircraft chop the air into violent pieces, and the sound is so loud it erases small talk. Men communicate with hand signals, with nods, with the language of work. Serrano climbs aboard without hesitation. Inside, the light is dim, greenish, making everyone look like ghosts. A loadmaster straps gear down with quick hands. The team chief, Senior Chief Okoye, broad-shouldered, eyes calm as deep water, leans toward Serrano. Okoye doesn't ask if Serrano is ready. She asks, "You eaten?" Serrano nods once. Okoye studies her face like she's reading weather. "You sleep?" Serrano hesitates. "Some." Okoye grunts as if that's a correct answer for this life. Then, quieter, "Rourke told me you earned the slot." Serrano doesn't smile. "I hit the plate." Okoye's eyes hold hers. "Same thing, sometimes." Across from them, Park is not supposed to be here. He isn't on the mission manifest, but he is on the flight line because Rourke told him to deliver a sealed case. The case is long, phone-lined. A rifle case. Park holds it like it might contain a heartbeat. Okoye motions him closer. "That for Serrano?" Park nods, swallowing. "Yes, Senior Chief." Okoye opens it just enough to see inside, then closes it again. Her expression doesn't change, but something in her eyes shifts. She looks back at Serrano. "You didn't bring yours." Serrano's voice is quiet. "It's not mine." Okoye's jaw tightens. "You want it." Serrano's gaze flickers. "No." That answer should confuse Park, but it doesn't. Because is starting to understand Serrano's kind of discipline. She doesn't want comfort. She wants consistency. Same rifle, same ammo, same variables she's already fought. Okoye says, "Then you will use what you trained with." "Good." Park steps forward and hands the case to Serrano. His hands brush hers, and he feels how cold her fingers are, despite the heat of the flight line. "Petty officer," he says, voice strained by rotor wash. "Come back." Serrano looks at him for a moment longer than necessary. Then she nods once. Not a promise, but not nothing. Park steps back, watching her board fully now, watching the door slide shut, watching the aircraft lift and tilt and become a dark shape against the brightening sky. He stands there until the sound fades. And then he realizes he's shaking again. Because he can't stop seeing the still frame from the hostage video. Because he can't stop thinking about the words Serrano used. Certain. Back at the range, Halvorsen sits alone under the shade net, staring at the scoreboard like it betrayed him. A decade of being the guy is a kind of addiction. It's not just pride. It's identity. It's safety. And now, with Serrano gone, he has nothing to shoot at except his own reflection. He thinks about what she said. "Your record built your mouth." And anger rises because it's true enough to hurt. He hears Boots approach. Rourke stops beside him. Halvorsen doesn't look up. "You sent her." Rourke's voice is calm. "Yes." Halvorsen's laugh is bitter. "Over me." Rourke says, "Over your second miss." Halvorsen finally looks up, eyes hard. "I hit." Rourke's stare is flat. "You hit wrong." A pause. Halvorsen's voice drops. "You know what it is, right? Sending her." Rourke doesn't answer. Halvorsen presses, sharper. "It's optics." Rourke's eyes narrow slightly. "If you say that again, Chief, I'll have you off this base before lunch." Halvorsen swallows anger. "Then tell me why." Rourke's voice softens by a fraction, just enough to make it more dangerous. "Because she waits. You push." Halvorsen scoffs. "Aggression wins fights." Rourke nods once. "It also kills hostages." Halvorsen goes still. Rourke continues, "Your record is impressive, but it's built on the assumption that the shot is about you." Serrano shoots like it's about the person on the other side of the impact. Halvorsen's mouth tightens. "You don't know that." Rourke looks toward the ocean. "I do." Halvorsen's eyes narrow. "How?" Rourke's voice is quiet. Because I read her file. And because I saw her face when the hostage target went up. Halvorsen wants to ask what the file says. But he doesn't. Because some questions, once asked, can't be unasked. Rourke steps away. Go get some sleep, Chief. Halvorsen watches him go. And the emptiness left behind is worse than losing. It's being irrelevant. In the aircraft, Serrano sits with her back against the wall, gear strapped tight. The case rests between her boots. The vibrations travel up her bones like a second heartbeat. Okoye sits across from her, checking a map, then checking it again. Another operator, Torres, cleans his nails with a knife point because his hands don't know what to do when they are not working. Nobody talks much. Talking is a luxury. Serrano closes her eyes and tries to rest. But the moment she lets her guard down, memory pushes in. Not the whole thing at once. Just a sensory shot. Dust. Heat. A taste of copper. The high whine of a drone overhead. A voice on comms saying a name. Lena. Like a plea. Serrano's fingers tighten on the strap of her case, and she forces her mind back to the present. Count breaths. Listen to rotors. Feel the cold of the metal buckle under her thumb. Okoye's voice cuts through. 5 mics. 5 minutes. Serrano opens her eyes. Okoye looks at her, then down at the case. You've got history with that rifle. Serrano doesn't answer. Okoye doesn't push. She only says, you don't need to carry it alone. Serrano's gaze holds hers. Yes, I do. Okoye nods slowly, accepting the truth even if she doesn't like it. The aircraft tilts. The loadmaster signals. They're coming in low now. The world outside a blur of coastline, scrub, and hard angles. They land in a tight zone behind a rise, out of sight from the main road. The moment the door opens, heat and dust slam in. The rotors throw grit into eyes and teeth. They move fast. They always do. A vehicle waits, unmarked, matte paint. They pile in, heads down, rifles close, bodies packed tight. Serrano keeps her case on her lap like a child. The ride is rough, the road broken. The smell inside the vehicle is sweat and metal and a faint chemical tang from someone's antiseptic wipes. Okoye briefs in clipped phrases. Target building is concrete. 2-story. Windows barred on lower level. Rooftop access on the west side. Hostages last seen on 2nd floor. Militia commander moves between rooms. We get one clean angle from the ridgeline. Time window at first light. Serrano listens, absorbing, mapping. Torres asks, what's the fallback? Okoye's eyes are hard. There isn't one that doesn't cost. Silence. They arrive at the base of a ridge. The team dismounts, moving into scrub and rock. The air smells different here. Dry, sun-baked, faintly sour like old vegetation. They climb in silence, boots finding purchase, gears shifting, breath controlled. At the top, the world opens. Below them, the compound sits in a shallow valley, surrounded by dirt roads and scattered outbuildings. A few vehicles, a guard post, men walking with rifles slung, careless in the way armed men get when they think nobody can touch them. Distance to target, long, very long. Okoye sets up a small hide behind rocks and netting, blending them into the ridgeline. They work fast but careful, building invisibility. Serrano opens the case. Inside is the M82, broken down, oiled, familiar in a way that feels like a curse. She assembles it with a practiced rhythm. Pin, latch, check, press. Torres watches her hands. You ever think about switching to something lighter? He asks, trying to sound casual. Serrano's voice is flat. Lighter doesn't reach like this. Torres nods, accepting. Okoye hands Serrano a small device. Wind meter. Confirm your calls. Serrano takes it, but she already knows. The wind in a valley is a liar. It swirls, it eddies, it changes because it's bored. She sets the rifle on its bipod, adjusts the re-bag, checks her bubble level. The scope view is crisp enough to make the compound feel close, but not close enough to make the moral distance any shorter. Okoye murmurs, we'll get confirmation of hostage location. Then you'll take the shot if he presents. Serrano nods once. Park isn't here, but she hears his voice anyway. What was the name? And she feels the old ache under her ribs. She pushes it down. Because this is not about her pain. It's about not creating new pain for someone else. The radio crackles softly with updates from an unseen asset. Coordinates. Visuals. A whisper of human life reduced to grid squares and windows. Okoye says, "Stand by." Minutes pass like hours. The sun begins to rise, pale and thin, washing the valley in weak light. Shadows stretch. The air cools, then warms quickly. A figure appears on the second-floor balcony, thin, wearing a cap, holding a phone. Not the commander, just a guard. Then another figure, heavier, confident, moving with ownership. Okoye stiffens. Possible target. Serrano's eye goes to the scope. Her world narrows again. The figure steps into better light. Serrano sees a beard, a scar on the cheek, a posture that suggests he expects obedience. Okoye whispers, "Confirm." A voice in Serrano's earpiece murmurs, "Confirmed." "Commander." The commander turns, speaking to someone behind him. For a second, his head aligns with the balcony railing. Serrano calculates without thinking. Distance, angle, wind, mirage, spin drift. The subtle drop that will turn a bullet into a question mark if she misjudges. Okoye's voice is low. "If you have the inner, take it." Serrano inhales, half exhales, holds. Her finger begins the press. And then a child steps into frame. Not a hostage. A local kid, maybe 10, holding a plastic bottle, moving like he belongs there. The commander reaches out, grabs the kid by the shoulder, shoves him aside without looking, like swatting a fly. But the kid's body crosses the line of fire for one terrible second. Serrano freezes. Her finger stops. Okoye's breath catches. "Hold," she whispers. Serrano holds. The commander moves again, the window narrowing. Okoye's voice is urgent now, but controlled. "Is going to step back inside. If we lose him." Serrano doesn't answer, because she can see what Okoye can't from her angle. Behind the commander, in the doorway shadow, a hostage shifts. A bound wrist, a face half visible, eyes. The hostage looks out, directly into the sun, directly into the valley, directly, Serrano feels, with a silent plea. Then the commander steps sideways, and for a fraction of a second the hostage's head aligns behind him. A stacked risk, a shot that could save or kill. Okoye whispers, "Serrano." Serrano's finger trembles for the first time. Not from fear, from memory. Because in her mind, Lena's name is not a whisper anymore. It's a weight. Serrano doesn't shoot. The commander steps inside. The balcony goes empty. The moment is gone. Okoye's jaw tightens. "Why didn't you take it?" Serrano's voice is barely audible. "Because I wasn't certain." Okoye's eyes flash. "We may not get another window." Serrano swallows. "I know." Torres shifts, uncomfortable, because he feels the tension between them, between the mission and the soul. Okoye leans closer, voice hard but not cruel. "Certainty is a luxury." Serrano's eyes lift, sharp. "No, certainty is the job." Okoye stays at her, then looks away, breathing slow. They wait, and waiting becomes its own kind of torture. The radio crackles again, movement inside. Hostages relocated. Commander now on lower level. Okoye curses under her breath. Quiet. Torres whispers, "If they move them." Okoye cuts him off with a hand signal. Minutes drag. Then the compound erupts in sudden motion. A vehicle pulls in fast, dust trailing. Men run. Someone yells. A door slams. Okoye's voice tightens. "What's happening?" The earpiece voice responds, strained. "They are prepping to move. Hostages going mobile. We're losing the stationary option." Okoye's face hardens. She looks at Serrano. "We need to stop. Now." Serrano's stomach drops. A moving target at long range is not impossible. It's just unforgiving. Okoye speaks into comms. Fast. "Confirm route. Confirm vehicle." The reply, "White pickup. 2 hostages in back. Commander likely front passenger. Leaving in under 2 minutes." Okoye turns to Serrano. If that truck leaves, we don't get them back. Serrano's mouth goes dry. Okoye points toward a stretch of dirt road that cuts between two low berms. You've got one choke point. If you can disable the engine block. Serrano's eyes flick to the road through the scope. Distance, angle, wind, time, and the worst part, hostages in the bed of the truck. Bodies bouncing. A shot that's off by inches could take a life you're trying to save. Okoye's voice is low. Can you do it? Serrano feels the valley tilt. This is the shot that matters. Not a plate. Not a record. Not Halvorson's smirk. A real human consequence. Serrano inhales. She hears Park's young voice in her memory. Come back. She hears her own whisper. Lena. And she realizes the mission is forcing her into the exact space she has been avoiding for years. The space where certainty must be earned in seconds. The truck appears. White, dusty, moving faster than she wants. Men in the cab. Two figures in the bed, hands bound, heads down. Okoye whispers, now. Serrano tracks the truck, reticle floating, breathing controlled. She looks for the engine block, metal behind metal, angles and density. The truck hits the choke point. Serrano presses the trigger. The rifle roars. The shot cracks across the valley like thunder. The truck jerks. For a second, Serrano thinks she did it. Then the truck keeps moving. Not disabled, just startled. Okoye's voice is sharp. Miss. Serrano's throat tightens. No, impact. Not enough. The truck accelerates. The hostages bounce violently, one nearly thrown sideways. Okoye's face is stone. You've got one more before they clear line of sight. Serrano's hands feel suddenly heavy. Not from the rifle, from the weight of consequence. She tracks again, faster now, pushing the edge of control. Wind shifts. Mirage dances. The truck is almost past the berm. Serrano starts the press. And then the hostage in the bed lifts his head. Eyes wide. He looks straight toward the ridge line, as if he can see her, as if he knows. Serrano's finger stops again, microscopic hesitation. Because she is not shooting steel. She is shooting into a moving slice of life. Okoye's voice breaks slightly, urgency sharpened to a needle. Serrano. Serrano forces herself through it. Press. The rifle detonates again. The shot flies. The truck hits the beam line and disappears behind it. Out of sight. No confirmation. No ring. No obvious smoke. Just dust. Okoye stays through her binoculars, jaw clenched so hard it looks painful. The radio crackles, frantic. They are gone. They are gone. We lost visual. Okoye lowers the binoculars slowly. The hide is silent except for the wind and Serrano's breathing, now loud, uneven. Torres mutters, "We're cooked." Okoye doesn't answer. She looks at Serrano. And Serrano, finally, looks like someone who can feel pain. Her voice is raw, quiet. I couldn't be certain. Okoye's eyes hold hers. And now they'll move them somewhere we can't reach. Serrano swallows hard. For the first time, the mission feels like it's slipping away because of her discipline, because of the exact thing that made Rourke choose her. Okoye speaks into comms. Controlled. We exfil. We'll reposition. The reply is grim. Too late. They are already in the green zone. Okoye closes her eyes for a second, then opens them, and they're different now. Harder. She looks at Serrano. Pack up. Serrano's hands move automatically, breaking down the rifle, placing it back in the case like it's fragile. But inside, something is cracking. Because she didn't miss steel. She missed a chance. And that kind of miss echoes. They move off the ridge line, faster now, less careful about silence because the mission has shifted from precision to pursuit. Dust rises. The sun climbs. Sweat stings eyes. Okoye receives new instructions on comms. Route changes, contingency plans, a fallback assault option that will cost lives. Serrano hears snippets. Stack, breach, night, risk. Every word is a weight. They reach the vehicle. The engine starts. As they drive, Serrano stares out at the passing scrub and rock, and she sees Lena again, not as a face, but as a feeling. The feeling of being too late. Okoye finally speaks. voice low enough that only Serrano hears. You were chosen because you don't chase. Serrano swallows. And that's why we lost them. Okoye's eyes stay forward. Maybe. Serrano's chest tightens. That's not an answer. Okoye's voice is quiet. No, it's the truth. We don't know yet. Sometimes restraint is the only thing that keeps a hostage alive. Sometimes it's the reason they die. Serrano flinches as if struck. Okoye continues. You want certainty? Own it again. Because tonight you may have to take a shot with less information than you deserve. Serrano's throat tight. And if I miss? Okoye finally looks at her. Then you live with it. And you still show up tomorrow. That's the job. Serrano looks away, eyes burning. They return to a forward staging area as the sun begins to dip again. The operation has shifted. Now there's talk of an assault. A night breach. Close quarters. Serrano sits on a crate outside the makeshift command post, rifle case beside her, hands clasped between her knees. She hears laughter inside, brief, strained. Men using humor like tape to hold themselves together. She doesn't go in. She stays outside with the wind. Torres steps out, lighting a small heater pack for his hands. He looks at Serrano for a long moment, then says, You did what you could. Serrano's voice is flat. I did what I wanted. Torres frowns. What's that mean? Serrano's eyes lift to him. I wanted to be clean. Torres goes still. Serrano continues, barely above a whisper. I wanted no blood on the wrong person. Torres nods slowly, understanding dawning. Serrano's jaw tightens. And now the wrong people might pay anyway. Torres doesn't have a reply that matters. He just sits beside her, close enough to share heat, not close enough to invade. Minutes pass. Then Okoye exits the command post, face set. We're going in, she says. Serrano stands immediately. Okoye looks at her. You'll be on overwatch for the breach. Not primary shot. You'll take what you can if you get clean ID. Serrano nods, but something inside her twists. Not primary, because she hesitated. Because she wasn't certain fast enough. Okoye adds, this isn't punishment. It's risk management. Serrano's voice is quiet. I understand. But she doesn't. Not emotionally. Because she feels the old story trying to repeat. You miss once. You get moved aside. You watch someone else take the moment that might have redeemed you. She shoulders her gear. They move out under darkness, guided by NVGs and hand signals. The world reduced to green shapes and quiet breath. They set up Overwatch on a different ridgeline. Closer now, but still far enough that a shot would be long. Serrano lies prone behind the M82 again, cheek to stock, scope adjusted for low light. Below, the assault element moves like shadows. Okoye's voice in comms is a whisper. Stacking. Serrano's reticle floats over windows, doors, corners. She waits, and waiting feels like penance. Then movement. A figure appears in a window. Hostage? God! She can't tell. The glass distorts. The light inside flickers. Serrano's pulse kicks. She tries to be certain. Okoye whispers, breach in 10. Serrano's finger rests near the trigger, not on it. Discipline. A door below blows inward, silent to Serrano's ears at this distance. But she sees the flash, the shift. Figures pour in. Inside the building, shapes collide. Then a shadow yanks one hostage into view near a window, using the hostage as a shield. Serrano's breath catches. This is the nightmare geometry. The militiaman's head appears over the hostage's shoulder, a fraction, a sliver. Serrano can take it. She can. But the sliver is not stable. It moves. It bobs. It disappears and reappears like a bad signal. Okoye's voice hisses in comms. Do you have it? Serrano's eye strains, calculating. Wind. Distance. Angle. A head-sized target behind a human shield. She can end it. Or she can create the worst kind of silence. Serrano whispers, so quiet it's almost lost on comms. I'm not certain. Okoye's voice snaps. Serrano, we don't have time for... And then the hostage's head jerks. A gunshot inside the building. The hostage collapses out of frame. Serrano's stomach drops as if the ground vanished. A second later, the militiaman appears fully, stepping into the window, exposed, weapon raised. Too late for the hostage, but not too late for justice. Serrano's entire body goes cold and hot at once. Okoye roars and comes. Take him. Serrano's finger moves. The press is perfect. The rifle blasts. The shot flies. And through the scope, Serrano sees the man's head snap back. He vanishes from the window. Okoye's voice is hard. Impact. Serrano's voice is hollow. Impact. The comms erupt with movement, shouts, confirmations, the messy sounds of close-range violence that Serrano can't fully hear but can feel. But Serrano doesn't feel relief. Because the hostage still fell. Because she waited for certainty, and certainty arrived only after the cost. She lies there, cheek pressed to the stock, and the scope view swims. Not from mirage. From tears she refuses to let fall. Okoye's voice softens suddenly, as if she senses it. Serrano. Serrano doesn't answer. Okoye says, "You ended him. That matters." Serrano's voice is a rasp. It doesn't bring the hostage back. Silence. Then Okoye. Quietly, "No." Serrano closes her eyes for 1 second. And in that second, she sees Lena again. Not as guilt, but as a question. How many times will you be asked to choose between clean and necessary? Serrano opens her eyes. The operation ends before dawn. 1 hostage recovered alive. 1 dead. Commander neutralized. Evidence collected. The Team X fills under a sky turning gray. They return to the staging area. Okoye walks straight to Serrano and grips her shoulder. Firm. "You did your job." Serrano's face is blank. "I did part of it." Okoye's gaze is steady. "You're still here. That means you do the next part too." Serrano nods, but she feels like a hollow rifle casing. Later, on the aircraft ride back, Serrano sits with the case between her boots again. This time, the vibration doesn't feel like a heartbeat. It feels like a countdown, because she knows something now that she didn't fully accept before. There will never be a perfect shot. Only the shot you take when you decide you can live with the consequences. And back at the coastal base, the scoreboard still waits, painted numbers and legend. But Serrano no longer cares about records. Not the way the men on the range do. Because she has learned the cruelest truth of all. Sometimes you can do everything right and still lose something you can't replace. CTA 3,500 words. I know, that one hurt. The moment she waited for certainty, and certainty came only after the cost, it stays with you. If you're still here, if you need to see whether Serrano finds a way to carry that weight without breaking, subscribe. You're not just watching shots, you're watching a soul under pressure. Now, keep going. Serrano returns to the range 2 days later like nothing happened. That's what people expect from operators. Return, reset, repeat. But Park sees the difference immediately. He's there early, setting up spotting scopes, checking sandbags, helping the range crew hang steel. He hears boots behind him and turns. Serrano stands in the same place she stood the first morning. Quiet, contained. But her eyes look farther away. Park swallows. "Petty officer." Serrano nods once. "Park." He wants to ask if she's okay. He knows okay is a stupid word here, but it's the only human one he has. Instead, he says, "They said the mission." Serrano cuts him off gently. "Don't." Park stops, cheeks flushing. "Yes, petty officer." Serrano looks at him for a long beat. Then she says, "Softer, eat something." Park almost laughs, but it dies in his throat. Because now he understands. She says it because it's the only care she can safely give. Rourke arrives with a clipboard and Mirrored Eye Pro. He calls the shooters in. Today isn't qualification. It's recalibration. Back to basics. Back to steel. Halvorsen is there too. He stands apart, arms crossed, face set in a mask that looks like indifference until you notice how often his eyes track Serrano. When Serrano approaches the firing point, Halvorsen steps forward slightly, like he can't help it. Rourke's voice is neutral. "We're running groups at distance." Confirming consistency. Halvorsen's mouth twitches. "For what?" Rourke looks at him. "For whatever comes next." Halvorsen snorts softly, but he doesn't argue. Serrano sets up behind the rifle again. the M82 familiar under her hands. Park takes position beside her, spotting scope trained downrange. The steel plates hang in the morning light, unchanged. They don't know what they represent. They don't know they are stand-ins for humans. They just wait to ring. Rourke says, "Shooter ready." Serrano raises 2 fingers. She fires. The plate rings. Clean. Park's breath releases. Serrano fires again. Ring. Again. Ring. The group tightens, and Park feels something inside him unclench, because for a moment it seems like the world can be simple again. Breath, wind, press, ring. But then, between shots, Halvorsen speaks. Low enough that only Serrano and Park can hear. "You missed, didn't you?" Park's spine goes rigid. Serrano doesn't look up. "Move back, Chief." Halvorsen's voice is quiet, insistent. "You missed before. That's why you're like this." Serrano's finger pauses on the trigger. The pause is tiny, but Park sees it. Halvorsen presses, voice sharper. "They don't send you on that kind of work unless you've already paid for something." Serrano's shoulders rise and fall with a controlled breath. She speaks without turning. "You don't know what you're talking about." Halvorsen's laugh is humorless. "I know what guilt looks like. I've worn it too." Serrano's head lifts slightly, just enough that Park sees her jaw tighten. Halvorsen continues, voice dropping into something almost intimate. "So tell me, who was it?" Park's mouth goes dry. Serrano's voice is a whisper that could cut glass. "Back away." Halvorsen doesn't, and Park realizes suddenly, this isn't about the record anymore. Halvorsen is trying to win something else. Control. Narrative. If he can name her pain, he can shrink her into it. Serrano turns her head slowly, eyes flat. "You want a story," she says. Halvorsen's gaze locks on hers. Serrano continues, voice steady. "You want it to be simple. You want me to be a lesson you can tell the guys about later." Halvorsen's mouth tightens. Serrano says, "Here's the only lesson you get. When you ask a person to speak their worst day out loud, you're not being strong." Halvorsen's eyes flash. "You think I'm weak?" Serrano's voice doesn't rise. "I think you're scared." Halvorsen steps closer, anger breaking through. "Of what?" Serrano holds his gaze. "Of being ordinary." The words land like a slap. Halvorsen's face goes pale. For a moment, he looks like he might do something stupid. Then Rourke's voice cuts through, sharp. "Chief, move." Halvorsen's head snaps toward Rourke. "This is..." Rourke steps closer, eyes hard behind mirrored lenses. "Move. Now." Halvorsen takes a slow step back, then another, but his eyes never leave Serrano. Rourke looks at Serrano. "Continue." Serrano turns back to the rifle. Park watches her hands, expecting tremor, expecting fracture. But Serrano does what she always does. She returns to the problem. Breath. Wind. Press. The next shot rings. Dead center. Park realizes his own hands are shaking again. But now it isn't fair. It's all because Serrano is doing something harder than shooting. She's choosing to stay functional inside a storm. After the string, Serrano stands, steps away from the rifle, and walks toward the water break area. Park follows, because he can't help it. He catches up and blurts, "Petty officer, who was Lena?" Serrano stops. The wind off the ocean lifts strands of hair from under her cover. She doesn't look at Park right away. When she does, her eyes are not angry. They are tired. "She was my spotter," Serrano says. Park's throat tightens. "In the teams." Serrano shakes her head once. "Before." Park's mind races. "Another unit." Serrano's gaze goes distant. "Another life." Park swallows. "What happened?" Serrano's jaw tightens. "We were on Overwatch. Bad intel. Wrong time window. The target moved. A kid walked into the frame." Park's stomach twists, remembering the child at the compound. Serrano continues, voice low, controlled. "I waited. I wanted certainty. I wanted clean." Park barely breathes. Serrano says, "The target executed the hostage inside, then stepped out. Then I took the shot." Park feels cold spread through his chest. Serrano's eyes meet his. "Lena didn't blame me," she says. She said I did the right thing. Park whispers, then why? Serrano's mouth tightens. Because right doesn't always mean good. And Lena died 2 weeks later on a different op. And I kept thinking, if I had taken the shot earlier, maybe the world would have been different by an inch. Park's eyes burn. Serrano looks away toward the ocean. So now, when people talk about records, I don't hear numbers. Park doesn't speak. Serrano finishes, almost too quiet to hear. I hear silence. Park's throat works. Chief shouldn't have. Serrano cuts him off gently. Is human too. Park shakes his head, anger flaring. Is cruel. Serrano's eyes flick to him. Cruel is sometimes just pain with a uniform on. Park doesn't know what to do with that, because it asks him to have compassion for someone who tried to break her. Serrano looks back toward the range. You want to be good at this, Park? Park nods too fast. Yes. Serrano says, then learn this. The shot is never just the shot. Park stands still. Serrano steps away, leaving him with the wind and the weight of her truth. On the firing line, Halvorsen watches Serrano return. His face is unreadable, but his hands are clenched, because Serrano didn't just outshoot him. She outgrew him, and that is the one loss he doesn't know how to survive. The day continues with drills and steel and wind, but something has shifted under the surface. The men have seen Serrano's discipline. They've also seen Halvorsen's desperation, and nobody says it out loud. But the old myth is cracking. The myth that one man's record can define a unit. That night, Park sits alone near the dunes, eating an energy bar he doesn't taste. He stays at the ocean and thinks about Lena, about the idea that a person can do everything right and still carry guilt like a second skin. He thinks about Serrano's silence, how it isn't emptiness. It's control. It's survival. Behind him, footsteps crunch in the sand. Park turns. Halvorsen stands there, hands in pockets, face lit by moonlight. Park stiffens. Chief. Halvorsen nods once, gaze on the water. You're her spotter now. Park's mouth is dry. Yes, Chief. Halvorsen is quiet for a long moment. Then he says, you think I'm the villain. Park's heart pounds. Halvorsen cuts him off with a hand. Don't answer. I don't care what you think. Park goes still. Halvorsen continues, voice low, rougher than Park expects. When I said that thing about the gun being too heavy, I thought it was funny. Park doesn't speak. Halvorsen's jaw works. Then I watched her lift it like it was nothing, and I realized the gun wasn't the heavy thing. Park swallows. Halvorsen's eyes flick to him. You know what's heavy, Park? Park's voice barely works. No, Chief. Halvorsen looks back at the ocean, being the guy everyone expects to be unbreakable. Park's chest tightens despite himself. Halvorsen's voice drops. I built that record because it was the only way I knew to be safe. If I'm the best, nobody can question me. Nobody can replace me. Park's throat tight. Then, why go after her? Halvorsen laughs softly, bitter. Because if she's better, what am I? Park has no answer. Halvorsen's gaze sharpens again, the vulnerability snapping back into armor. So here's my advice. Don't get sentimental. This job will eat you. Park feels his hands tremble. Serrano's not sentimental. Halvorsen's mouth twitches. No, she's something worse. Park frowns. Worse. Halvorsen looks at him. She's honest. Then Halvorsen turns and walks away, leaving Park alone with the ocean and the strange truth that even the loudest men can be haunted. Park looks down at his hands. He thinks about what Serrano said. The shot is never just the shot. And for the first time, he understands the scoreboard as what it really is. Not a trophy. A story people tell themselves so they don't have to talk about the quiet things. The next morning, Serrano is back on the line again. Same calm. Same discipline. But Park is different. He spots with sharper attention, not just to wind and mirage, but to Serrano's breathing, her pauses, the moments where memory tries to crawl into her hands. He learns when to speak, and when to let silence be the support. Serrano's groups tighten again. Steel rings. The men on the line stop murmuring so much. They watch with a different kind of respect now, less surprised, more accepting. And in the middle of it, Rourke updates the board again, repainting numbers where the sun has faded them. Halvorson's record still sits at the top, but Serrano's number sits beside it now, permanent. Not because she chased glory, because she demonstrated something rarer. That skill doesn't need volume. It needs truth. Park watches Serrano fire another perfect group, and he realizes something that chills and inspires him at the same time. The day Serrano broke Halvorson's decade record in silence was not the climax. It was the opening of a door, and whatever comes through that door next will demand more than steel can measure. The week after the mission, the base looks the same to anyone who doesn't know how to read the tiny changes. Same salt in the air, same goals circling like they own the sky, same steel targets hanging out in the shimmer. But the men walk a little quieter. They don't joke as much on the way to the range. They don't slap each other's shoulders as hard. They keep glancing at Serrano like they're trying to decide where to place her in the story they've been telling for years. Serrano gives them nothing to hang a label on. She shows up early, checks her gear, wipes salt from her lenses, and sets her notebook on the bench like it's a medical chart. Park arrives with 2 coffees and stops, realizing he doesn't know if offering one is kindness or an intrusion. He stands there, awkward, 19 again in his own mind. Serrano notices anyway. Notices the coffee. Notices the hesitation. Notices the way his fingers squeeze the cardboard sleeves like he's trying to keep his hands from shaking. "You don't have to," she says. Park swallows. "I wanted to." Serrano studies him for a beat, then takes 1 cup without a smile. "Thanks." Park exhales like he's been holding his breath since the helicopter lifted off. They sit on a low concrete step facing the range. Beyond the berms, the ocean is a hard blue line, and the wind is already starting its daily argument with the flags. Park wants to ask about the hostage who didn't come back. He wants to ask if Serrano sleeps, if the name Lena still tastes like metal. But he remembers her rule, don't. So he asks something else, something he can carry without breaking her. "Do you ever stop hearing it?" he says. Serrano's gaze stays on the range. "Hearing what?" "The silence," Park whispers. "After." Serrano takes a sip of coffee. The cup trembles slightly, the first crack in her steadiness Park has ever seen. "It gets quieter," she says finally. "But it doesn't leave." Park nods, throat tight. Serrano sets the coffee down and rests her hands on her knees. "You know what people think?" she asks, still not looking at him. Park waits. "They think I'm quiet because I'm confident," Serrano says. "Or because I'm angry. Or because I'm trying to prove something." Park's mouth goes dry. "Aren't you?" Serrano turns her head and looks at him. "I'm quiet because I'm listening," she says. "To the wind. To the math. To the part of me that still wants to hesitate." Park feels a chill despite the warming sun. Serrano looks away again. "And because when you talk, you can pretend it's about ego. When you're quiet, you can't hide what it's really about." Park's voice comes out small. "What is it really about?" Serrano's jaw tightens. "Responsibility." 1 word, heavy as the rifle Halvorson mocked. A truck passes on a distant service road, and the sound is mundane and wrong in Park's ears. Life continuing as if nothing has changed. Rourke appears on the range, clipboard under one arm, mirrored lenses catching the sun. He stops in front of them. "Qualification is in 48 hours, he says. Park blinks. Again. Rourke's mouth twitches. "Annual long range. We delayed it for operational reasons. It's back on." Serrano nods once. No visible reaction. Rourke looks at her. "You will shoot." Serrano's voice is neutral. "Yes, sir." Rourke shifts his gaze to Park. "You will spot." Park's chest tightens. "Yes, sir." Rourke pauses. "This isn't about records," he says, as if reading the air. "This is about whether the unit learns the right lesson." Then he walks away, leaving them with the ocean and the flags and the coming weight of the day. Park stays at Serrano. "You're going to break it," he whispers before he can stop himself. "His record." Serrano doesn't look at the scoreboard. She looks at the steel. "I don't care about his record," she says softly. "I care about my discipline." Park's throat tightens. "But..." Serrano cuts him off gently. "If the record falls, it falls. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Either way, I show up. Park nods, because there's nothing else to do. But inside, he feels something ignite. Not revenge. Not competition. A hunger for proof that quiet can be stronger than loud. That night, Halvorsen runs alone on the beach. He runs hard enough that his lungs burn and his calves knot and his breath tastes like pennies. He runs past the dunes, past the fenced-off sections, past the posted signs nobody reads. He runs because he can't shoot the problem out of his chest. He runs because he can't stop hearing Serrano's words. Scared of being ordinary. He hates that they landed. Hates that they were accurate. He slows near the waterline, boots sinking into wet sand, and looks out at the moonlit ocean. 10 years, he thinks. 10 years of being the guy. 10 years of younger shooters trying to beat him and failing, and him letting the myth grow because the myth felt like armor. Then Serrano arrived and didn't even try to join the myth. She just shot. He spits into the sand, angry at himself, angry at her, angry at the universe for changing the rules without asking. A shape approaches down the beach. Okoye. She stops a few feet away, arms folded, face unreadable in the low light. You're running to punish yourself, she says. Halvorsen snorts. You following me now? Okoye's voice is calm. I'm making sure you don't do anything stupid. Halvorsen laughs once, bitter. Stupid like what? Challenge her to a duel at sunrise. Okoye's eyes narrow slightly. Stupid like sabotage. Stupid like pride. Halvorsen's jaw tightens. You think I'd sabotage? Okoye holds his gaze. I think you're capable of anything if you believe your identity is threatened. Halvorsen's nostrils flay. Okoye steps closer. I've watched you for years, she says quietly. You weren't always like this. Halvorsen's voice comes out rough. Like what? Okoye doesn't hesitate. Afraid. Halvorsen's throat works. I'm not afraid of her. Okoye's gaze is steady. Then stop acting like it. Silence. The waves roll in and out. Indifferent. Okoye continues. Softer. You missed on the inner plate twice. Not because you forgot the math. Because you forced it. Because you wanted to prove you could still own the moment. Halvorsen's face hardens. So what? I should just step aside. Okoye shakes her head once. No. You should learn. Halvorsen scoffs. From her. Okoye's voice sharpens. Yes. From her. From the fact that she doesn't need your permission. From the fact that she doesn't talk because she doesn't need to. Halvorsen's fists clench. She thinks she's better than all of us. Okoye's eyes flash. No. She thinks the shot is bigger than all of you. Halvorsen opens his mouth, then closes it. Okoye watches him. You want to be the best? She asks. Halvorsen's laugh is humorless. That's what I am. Okoye's voice is quiet and brutal. Then be the best teammate. Not the best story. Halvorsen looks away toward the water, and for a second he looks older than his rank. Okoye turns to leave, then stops. Annual call in 2 days, she says over her shoulder. Show up right. Then she walks away, leaving Halvorsen alone with the moon and the uncomfortable truth that his record might not be the point anymore. The morning of qualification arrives with a wind that feels personal. It comes in sharp gusts off the ocean, then falls away into deceptive calm, then returns again as if the coastline itself is breathing. The range is busier than usual. More observers. More cameras. Not for publicity. Nothing here is for publicity, but for review, for training records, for the chain of accountability that follows elite units like a shadow. The steel targets are set at distances that make Park's stomach tighten just looking at them. 1,100 yards. 1,430. 1,760. 1,980. Targets so far they look like dark specks until you put glass on them, and then they become precise shapes that demand precise consequences. Rourke stands under the canopy by the scoreboard, clipboard in hand, mirrored lenses hiding whatever he feels about what's coming. Halvorsen stands with his spotter, posture rigid, mouth set. He looks like he's braced for impact. Serrano stands with Park, quiet as ever, notebook in her pocket, fingers checking her turret caps. Park glances at her and sees that her calm is not effortless. It's chosen. Rourke calls, listen up. This is the annual long-range qualification. Standards are standards. Wind is wind. You get what you earn. No one is entitled to a number. The men shift, listening. Rourke continues. There's been noise lately. About records. About roles. About what matters. His head turns slightly, and Park can feel his gaze land on Halvorsen without seeing his eyes. Rourke says, what matters is discipline. Then he points to the firing line. Shooter 1. Chief Halvorsen. Halvorsen steps forward. Park feels the range attention tighten like a rope. Halvorsen sets up behind the rifle with practiced precision, but Park sees the difference now. The way his shoulders are slightly higher than they used to be. The way he fights the need to rush. His spotter murmurs wind calls. Halvorsen inhales, exhales, breaks his first shot. The steel rings. A solid hit. The second shot rings. The third rings. The group is good. Not perfect, but good. Halvorsen stands, face controlled. He doesn't look at Serrano, but Park notices his hands unclench slightly. Maybe, Park thinks, he can do this without turning it into a war. Rourke calls the next shooter. Serrano steps forward. Halvorsen spotter, and half the line, and even the range crew who pretend they don't care. All of them watch her settle behind the M82 again. The rifle looks heavy. It always will. But Serrano doesn't fight it. She becomes part of it. Park sets his spotting scope, checks mirage, reads the flags. Wind is quartering, he whispers. Right to left, then it's... Serrano raises one finger again. Wait. Park clamps his mouth shut and watches. The flags snap. A gust hits, hard. Serrano doesn't shoot. She waits. The gust steadies into a consistent push. Serrano shoots. The plate rings, clean and scented. Park's chest loosens, then tightens again as he realizes the obvious. She's not just shooting the target. She's shooting time. Each shot is placed not only in space, but in the exact moment the environment gives her the best chance to be correct. Second shot. Ring. Third shot. Ring. The group tightens. Rourke marks the score without expression. The day advances through stages like a slow tightening spiral. Cold bore unknown distance. Timed engagements. Alternate positions that force shooters to adapt their bodies, not just their math. On one stage, shooters must fire from a kneeling position with a rifle supported on a pack, the kind of position that exposes every weakness in core stability and breath control. Halvorsen's shots are strong but slightly wider than usual. Serrano's are narrower. Park watches the scoreboard update after each stage, and he feels the air change as the gap shrinks. Not shrinks like a casual competition. Shrinks like a collision course. Between stages, Park notices men watching Halvorsen with something like pity. They are not mocking him. They are realizing he's human. And that realization scares them, because the myth of the unbreakable marksman has been comforting. Serrano doesn't speak. She checks her dope, wipes her lens, sips water, eats a small protein bar in 3 bites like it's fuel, not comfort. Park mirrors her, forcing himself to eat even when his stomach knots. Serrano notices anyway and nods slightly. Approval, in her language. Midday, the wind becomes erratic. The flags flick one direction then another, and the mirage runs like water, then pauses as if the air itself is holding its breath. This is where shooters lose their patience. This is where pride argues with physics. Rourke announces the same stage that defined Halvorsen's record years ago. The long string, 5 targets, shrinking size, mandatory hold changes. Park feels his mouth go dry. Halvorsen steps up and runs it again with crisp control, but not the effortless dominance of past years. On the third target, he hesitates too long waiting for a lull that never fully comes. He shoots anyway. The ring comes late and faint, an edge hit. A murmur runs down the line. Halvorsen's jaw tightens. He finishes the string with 2 more hits, but the damage is done. Not to his score alone, to his aura. Then Serrano steps forward for the same string. Park looks at the flags, then at the mirage, then back at Serrano's face. She looks present. Not haunted, present, like she has finally made peace with the fact that perfection is not purity, that discipline is not hesitation. It's choice. Serrano runs the string. Ring, ring, ring. On the fourth shot, the wind bucks hard. Park's heart leaps into his throat, but Serrano doesn't force it. She waits exactly one breath longer than everyone expects. Then she shoots. Ring. Dead center. A sound so clean it feels unreal. The last target is the smallest. The farthest. The one that makes Halvorson's record a legend. Serrano holds her breath halfway, presses, fires. The plate rings. And for a moment, there is no reaction at all. Because the hit is so perfect that the range collective brain refuses to accept it. Then the murmurs erupt like surf. Park feels dizzy. Rourke marks the score and doesn't speak, but his pen moves faster than usual. Halvorson stands rigid, staring toward the far berm as if he can will the last ring to have been a lie. Serrano steps away from the rifle and says nothing. She doesn't look at Halvorson. She doesn't look at the scoreboard. She looks down at Park, just briefly. "You with me?" she asks. Park's voice cracks. "Yes, petty officer." Serrano nods once. Then Rourke calls the next stage, and the day keeps tightening. By late afternoon, the scoreboard shows what no one expected. Serrano is ahead. Not by a lot, but enough that Halvorson's record is no longer safe. The last stage is the cold bore extreme distance. One shot. Unknown wind change. You don't get a second. This is the shot that defines the day. This is where legends are made and broken. Rourke calls the shooters in. "The last stage," he announces. Shooter will engage a single steel plate at 1,980 yards. Cold bore. One round. Best hit wins the stage. Score is final. The range goes silent. Park's heart hammers. Halvorson steps forward, eyes hard, face controlled. He looks like a man about to step into court. He sets up behind the rifle. His spotter murmurs. Wind is right to left, steady, 2 to 3. Halvorson breathes, slow. He fires. The shot cracks. The seconds stretch. Then the plate rings. A hit. But Park sees it through his glass. Outer edge. Low. Still a hit. But not the kind that protects a record. Halvorson sits up slowly, face unreadable. He stands, steps back, and folds his arms like it's armor. Now Serrano. Serrano steps forward and lies down behind the rifle. Park settles behind his spotting scope and reads the mirage. It's moving fast. Too fast. Wind is changing. He feels panic rise because he wants to help, but he remembers her finger. Wait. Serrano doesn't lift a finger this time. She speaks, barely audible. "Call it." Park blinks, startled. This is new. This is Serrano inviting him into the decision. Park swallows hard and forces his voice steady. Right to left, but it's gusting. It's not stable. If you wait for a lull, you might not get one. If you shoot in the gust, you can time it. Serrano's breathing is steady. Park whispers, "If you take it in the gust, hold one more than you want." Serrano doesn't nod, but her hand moves to the turret and makes a tiny adjustment. One click. Then she waits. Not for calm. For consistency. The gust steadies, pushing hard, predictable for the first time in minutes. Serrano inhales. Half exhales. Holds. Her finger begins the press. Park's breath catches, because he realizes what this is. Not just a shot at a plate. A shot at a decade. A shot at an identity. A shot that will rewrite what these men believe about who belongs behind the biggest rifle. Serrano fires. The rifle roars. The air shudders. The seconds stretch like a tight rope. Then the steel rings. Not an edge hit. Not a lucky clang. A pure, scented ring that sounds brighter than the others. Park's throat tightens. Rourke's head tilts slightly, as if even he wants to be sure. A range crewman checks through glass. Rourke speaks into the quiet. Impact confirmed. Inner. The range goes still. Halvorson's arms lower slowly, as if gravity finally won an argument he's been fighting for years. Rourke turns to the scoreboard. He adds the final numbers. The paint marker squeaks against the board. And then it's done. Serrano's total sits above Halvorson's. Above the number that has lived there for 10 years. She didn't tie it. She didn't barely edge it. She shattered it. Not with a shout. Not with a speech. With a single scented ring in the wind. Halvorson stays at the board. His mouth opens slightly, then closes. His eyes flick to Serrano, searching her face for triumph. Serrano gives him none. She simply clears the rifle, stands, and steps back from the line. The men around them don't cheer. Not at first, because cheering feels too loud for what just happened. They look at Serrano the way you look at a storm that has passed. Grateful, unsettled, changed. Park feels tears sting his eyes and hates himself for it, then stops hating himself because he remembers Serrano's truth. Responsibility. It makes you feel things. Rourke steps towards Serrano. He doesn't smile, but his voice is softer. Good shooting, he says. Serrano nods once. Yes, sir. Rourke pauses, then adds, quieter. Good discipline. Serrano's throat tightens, just barely. Yes, sir. Halvorsen finally moves. He walks towards Serrano slowly, as if approaching something that might explode. He stops a few feet away. The range is quiet enough that Park can hear Halvorsen's breathing. Halvorsen's voice comes out low, rough. I was wrong. Serrano looks at him. Halvorsen swallows. About the rifle. About you. Serrano doesn't respond immediately. Then she says, calm, it was heavy. Halvorsen blinks. Serrano continues, voice even. I just carried it anyway. Halvorsen's throat works, and for a moment his eyes look wet, though he never lets the water fall. He nods once, sharp, like accepting a punch. Then he says the one thing Park never expected to hear from him. Teach me what you're listening to. The range holds its breath. Serrano studies Halvorsen for a beat. Then she nods once. Start with the wind, she says. Halvorsen's mouth twitches, almost a smile, small and real. All right. Serrano shifts her gaze to Park. You did good, she tells him. Park's voice breaks. You did better. Serrano's eyes soften by a fraction. We did it, she corrects. And Park understands. The record isn't just hers. It's theirs. Because she let him speak at the moment it mattered, and he didn't freeze, and she trusted him, and the steel rang. Behind them, the scoreboard stands in the sea wind with Serrano's name at the top. A new story written in paint. But Serrano doesn't stay at it. She looks out toward the ocean where the horizon is sharp and indifferent, and Park sees her lips move again. Barely. A name. Lena. Not as guilt this time. As acknowledgement. As a promise kept the only way it can be kept in this world. By doing the job with discipline, again and again, even when the cost is real. The range begins to breathe again. Men talk quietly. Someone laughs once, relieved. The range crew begins resetting targets, because steel always needs resetting. Rourke turns away, but not before Park catches one small detail. Rourke writes something else on his clipboard. Not a score. A note. A lesson. Later, as the sun lowers and the wind cools, Serrano stands alone at the edge of the range with a rifle case at her feet. Park approaches carefully, like you approach someone near a cliff. Petty officer, he says. Serrano looks at him. Park swallows. Are you happy? Serrano's mouth twitches in something like surprise. Then she looks back toward the ocean. Happiness isn't the word, she says. Park waits. Serrano says, I'm lighter. Park's throat tightens. Serrano continues, quiet. Not because I broke a record. Because I proved to myself I can choose the moment without freezing. I can be disciplined without being trapped. Park whispers, and Lena? Serrano's eyes close for a second. When they open, they are steady. Lena would have hated the scoreboard, she says softly. She would have loved that you ate today. Park lets out a shaky breath that sounds like a laugh and a sob at the same time. Serrano picks up the rifle case. Go, she says, gentle but firm. Get some rest. Park nods. Yes, petty officer. He turns to leave, then stops. Petty officer Serrano. She looks at him. Park forces the words out. Thank you for letting me in. Serrano holds his gaze. Then she nods once. That's how you get better, she says. Together. Park walks away, and the wind off the ocean feels different on his face. Not gentler, just clearer. Behind him, Halvorsen stands near the scoreboard, staring at Serrano's name at the top. But his face isn't hard now. It's thoughtful. He looks at the number, then at the range, then at the ocean, as if seeing the world with a slightly different lens. Okoye passes him and stops. You okay? She asks. Halvorsen exhales slowly. Yeah, he says, then corrects himself. No, but I will be. Okoye's mouth twitches. Good answer. Halvorsen keeps staring at the board. She broke it without saying a word, he murmurs. Okoye nods. Skill speaks. Halvorsen's jaw flexes. And I talk too much. Okoye's gaze is steady. Then talk less. Listen more. Halvorsen nods. Small. Wind first, he says. Okoye pats his shoulder once and walks on. Halvorsen stands there alone for a moment longer. Then he turns away from the board and walks toward the firing line, where the flags snap and the mirage runs, where steel waits to ring again. Not as a king guarding a myth, as a shooter learning. And Serrano, quiet, disciplined, no longer trapped by her own hesitation, walks toward the armory with the heavy rifle case in her hand, carrying it like a fact, not a challenge. The ocean keeps breathing. The wind keeps shifting. The steel keeps waiting. And somewhere inside the quiet between shots, a new record lives, not just on a board, but in the unit's bones. Because everyone on that range learned something they didn't know they needed. The heaviest thing you carry isn't the rifle. It's the moment you decide to press the trigger. A CTA 4,8,000 words. Did you feel that shift? Not just the record breaking, but Halvorsen asking to learn, and Serrano finally feeling lighter. If that moment hit you, subscribe. Stories like this aren't about winners and losers. They're about what we carry and what we finally set down. Now, stay with them a little longer. That evening, the range is empty except for Park. He stands at the firing line alone, looking out at the distant steel like it's a constellation only he can see. He thinks about how the first morning he flinched so hard he almost dropped the spotting scope. He thinks about how today he called the wind and Serrano trusted him. He whispers to himself, as if practicing a prayer, consistency. A step crunches behind him. Park turns. Serrano stands there, hands in her pockets, cover pulled low. You don't have to be out here, Park says. Serrano's gaze stays on the targets. Neither do you. Park swallows. I just wanted to see it without everyone. Serrano nods slightly. The steel is honest when it's quiet. Park hesitates, then asks the question that has been burning in him since the mission. Do you think we could have saved both? Serrano's jaw tightens. She doesn't answer right away. When she does, her voice is soft, careful. I don't know. Park's chest tightens because he wants certainty. He wants her to tell him there is always a right choice. Serrano continues. If you stay in this job, you have to accept something. She looks at him then, eyes steady. Sometimes the best you can do is reduce harm, not eliminate it. Park whispers, that feels wrong. Serrano nods once. It will always feel wrong. That's how you know you're still human. Park's eyes burn. Serrano looks back toward the ocean. If it ever stops feeling wrong, she says, walk away, or you'll become dangerous. Park nods slowly, absorbing. A gust of wind snaps the range flag hard, and for a second both of them watch it like it's speaking. Park says, Chief Halvorsen really meant it, didn't he? Asking you to teach him. Serrano's mouth twitches, not quite a smile. He surprised me. Park hesitates. Do you forgive him? Serrano's gaze sharpens slightly. Forgiveness isn't my job. Then, softer, but I can work with him. Park nods. Serrano shifts her weight. You want to keep spotting from me? She asks. Park's throat tightens. Yes, if you'll have me. Serrano nods once. Then tomorrow you early. Park almost smiles through the tightness in his face. Yes, petty officer. Serrano turns to leave, then pauses. Park. He looks up. Serrano's voice is quiet. Good call today. Park's eyes sting. Thank you. Serrano walks away into the fading light. Park stays a moment longer, listening to the wind, smelling salt and dust and faint gun oil, and feeling, deep in his chest, something he has never felt on a range before. Not adrenaline, not fear, belonging. Days later, the base moves on, as it always does. New training cycles start. New briefings. New missions no one will talk about. But the scoreboard stays. Serrano's name at the top. A number above the decade-old legend. And every time a new shooter steps onto the line and someone thinks about making a joke, too heavy for you, too far for you, too hard for you, they hesitate. Because now they've seen what silence can do. They've heard a scented ring at 1,980 yards in coastal wind. They've watched a loud man learn. They've watched a quiet woman carry a heavy rifle like it was truth. And slowly, without a speech or a ceremony, the culture shifts. Not because of policy, because of proof. One morning, Halvorsen shows up early. Park is already there, setting up the spotting scope. Halvorsen stops beside him. "You're Park." Park stiffens. "Yes, Chief." Halvorsen nods toward the targets. "Wind's ugly today." Park swallows. "Yes, Chief." Halvorsen glances at the scope setup. "You've gotten better." Park's chest tightens. "Thank you, Chief." A pause. Halvorsen's voice drops. "I was hard on her." Park's mouth goes dry. Halvorsen continues, not looking at him. "And I was hard on you, indirectly. You didn't deserve that." Park feels his throat tighten. I'm learning." Halvorsen nods once. "Good." Then, awkwardly, "Keep her fed." Park blinks. Then a small laugh escapes before he can stop it. "Yes, Chief." Halvorsen's mouth twitches, almost amused, and he walks toward the firing line without another word. Serrano arrives a few minutes later, sees Halvorsen on the line, and pauses. Halvorsen looks back at her. For a moment, the old tension flickers. Then Halvorsen lifts a hand in a small gesture toward the flags. "Win first." Serrano nods once, and Park realizes something that feels almost like peace. The record didn't just change a number. It changed what these people believe they are allowed to become. Serrano settles behind the rifle. Halvorsen stands a respectful distance away, watching. Park reads the mirage and calls softly, right to left, steady two. Serrano raises one finger. "Wait." Park falls silent. The gust steadies. Serrano shoots. The steel rings. Clean. And the sound carries across the range, across the dunes, across the ocean air, not as a boast, but as a steady reminder. In the end, the wind doesn't care who you are. The rifle doesn't care who you are. The moment doesn't care who you are. Only discipline does. Only choice does. Only the quiet courage to press when it matters. OCTA 5, tilde 10,000 words. That final ring, the one that isn't about ego, but about belonging. If it stayed in your chest, subscribe. Because this is why we tell these stories. To remind you that the quiet ones aren't weak. They are listening. And when they finally act, the whole world has to adjust. Now, let's end where it began. On a late afternoon months later, the range is nearly empty again. The annual board has been repainted, the numbers bold against fresh white. Serrano stands alone in front of it, not because she wants to admire it, but because Rourke asked her to sign a training log posted beneath the scores. She holds a marker in her hand and writes her initials on the line. Simple, efficient. Then she pauses and looks at the top of the board. Her name, her number, Halvorsen's name beneath it, still there, still earned. A decade of proof, now followed by another kind. She hears footsteps behind her and turns. Park stands there in clean gear, posture steadier than it used to be, spotting scope case slung over one shoulder like it belongs. Petty officer, he says. Serrano nods. Park. He steps closer, eyes on the board. Still weird seeing it, he admits. Serrano's mouth twitches slightly. It's paint. Park nods. Yeah, but it means something. Serrano looks at him. What does it mean to you? Park swallows. That I don't have to be loud to be good. Serrano studies him for a beat, then nods once. Good. Park hesitates. And to you? Serrano's gaze drifts past the range, past the berm, toward the ocean where the horizon is sharp and bright. It means I can carry it, she says softly. Park's throat tightens. The rifle. Serrano shakes her head once. The weight. Park stands quietly, letting the words settle. The wind snaps the flag. The same wind, The same argument, day after day. Park looks at Serrano. Do you ever think about what Chief said? About living with it? Serrano nods slowly. Yes. Park whispers, and Serrano's voice is quiet, steady. I live with it by showing up disciplined, by not hiding, by not pretending the silence isn't there. Park nods, eyes stinging. Serrano turns fully toward him. You're going to be a good spotter, she says. Park's voice cracks. I'm trying. Serrano nods once. Keep trying. A pause. Then Park asks, almost afraid of the answer, will you ever tell the story? About Lena? Serrano's eyes soften by a fraction. Maybe, she says. When someone needs it. Park nods, understanding. Because stories aren't trophies either. They are tools. Serrano turns back to the board and looks at her name one last time. Then she caps the marker, sets it down, and walks away from the scoreboard without ceremony. No speech. No dramatic glance back. Just a quiet exit, the way she entered. Park watches her go, and as she passes the firing line, the ocean wind lifts the edge of her cover, and for a second she looks like what she is. Not a myth. Not a symbol. A disciplined human being who learned how to press the trigger of her life again. Behind her, the board stands with its numbers, proof for anyone who needs it. But Serrano doesn't need it anymore, because the real record, the one nobody can paint on wood, is the moment she stopped freezing inside her own need for certainty and started choosing with responsibility instead. The steel waits for the next shooter. The wind keeps shifting, and somewhere out there, beyond the dunes, beyond the edge of what anyone can predict, life keeps placing targets in front of people who don't feel ready. Some will talk. Some will smirk. Some will underestimate. And then, one day, someone quiet will lift something heavy, listen to the wind, and let skill speak in the only language that never lies. A clean, scented ring, and silence that finally feels earned.